Welcome back, folks. This is the stunning jar quilt sew-along tutorial. In this video, I will be covering the stacked jars block and construction of this amazing quilt. We highly recommend following the photograph written instructions in conjunction with this video tutorial. If you find this video helpful in creating the jar quilt, please like and subscribe. Enjoy the video. First, let's start by hooping up cutaway stabilizer in the hoop. Make sure the stabilizer is centered and taut in the hoop. Next, load the design onto your machine. Take batting 1 and place it on top of the hoop. Stitch the batting down using your machine. Once you're done stitching, remove the hoop from your machine and trim the batting to about 1 to 2 mm from the stitching. After you've trimmed the batting, stitch the placer line for the background. Now take fabric A and place it right side up on top of the hoop, covering the placer line. Stitch the fabric down using your machine. Once you're done stitching, remove the hoop from your machine and trim the fabric about 1 to 2 mm from the stitching. Make sure to leave the excess fabric in the seams. Using the bottom horizontal edge of fabric A as a placer line, place fabric B wrong side up, crossing the placer line by 1/4 inch, with the excess fabric towards the top of the hoop. Stitch the fabric down using your machine. Once you've stitched it down, fold it over, hold taut and stitch it down again. Now it's time to embroider the stippling. This will give your design a nice texture and dimension. Once you've finished with that, stitch the placer line for the contents of the bottom jar. Place fabric C wrong side up on top of the hoop, crossing the placer line by 1/4 inch, with excess fabric towards the top of the hoop. Stitch the fabric down using your machine. Once you've stitched it down, fold it over, hold taut and stitch it down again. Now it's time to trim. If you want to use PVC for your design, you can follow steps 10 and 11 to repeat the applique process for the jar using PVC. Trim the excess fabric using your applique scissors. Next, it's time to embroider the satin stitch around the jar. Once you've finished that, embroider the lid. Then repeat steps 7 to 13 for the top jar. After you've appliqued both jars, it's time to embroider the shines on both jars. This will give your design a nice finishing touch. Once you're done, remove the hoop from your machine and trim the seams to about 1/2 inch. And that's it. Your stacked jars block is now complete. Hold aside until you've completed all of your blocks. So, when you're ready to start joining your quilt blocks together, the first step is to lay them out on a flat surface and decide on your desired layout. This will give you an idea of how the finished quilt top will look and help you arrange the blocks into rows. Once you have your blocks laid out, it's time to start joining them together. To do this, you want to start with the first 2 blocks in each row. Make sure to place them right sides together and pin them together along the side seam. You want to take care to align the edges and corners accurately, so that your finished quilt top looks neat and tidy. Using your sewing machine, stitch the pin seam just inside the border that's already been stitched on the blocks. This will ensure that the stitching won't be visible on the right side of the quilt later. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam to secure the stitches. Repeat the process of joining the blocks in each row until all of the blocks in that row are joined together. Then move on to the next row and repeat the process until all of the horizontal rows are joined together. Once you've stitched the seam, open it out and press it flat with an iron. This will help the seam lie flat and prevent any puckering or bulkiness in your finished quilt top. To join the horizontal rows to each other, start by placing the first 2 rows right sides together and pin along the side seam. Before you stitch the final seam, it can be helpful to first tack stitch the joins of the blocks where the seams intersect. This will ensure that the blocks are properly aligned. Then, using your sewing machine, stitch the pin seam just inside the border already stitched on the blocks. Again, don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam to secure the stitches. Once you've stitched the seam, open it out and press it flat with an iron. Continue this process of joining the horizontal rows to each other until all of the rows are joined together. And just like that, your quilt top is ready for the next step. Trim your work so it's even. So, we've got our quilt top all sewn together and it's looking beautiful. Now it's time to move on to creating the back and binding. First, grab your backing and binding fabric and lay it out on a flat surface with the wrong side facing up. Now place your sewn quilt top on top of the backing fabric, making sure the wrong sides are facing each other. You can pin the layers together or even spray them with fabric adhesive spray to keep them in place. To keep all the layers together, we're going to stitch in the ditch. This means we're going to sew along the existing seams in the quilt, which will help keep them flat and in place even after washing. Don't worry about stitching every single seam, just choose the ones that are most important for keeping the central blocks flat. Make sure to use an invisible thread for the top and a matching thread for the bobbin underneath. Once we've got our stitching in place, we can trim the excess backing so it's 1.5 inches bigger than the quilt top. This extra fabric will be used to create the binding. Now it's time to start on the binding. Starting on any side, fold the backing fabric in half, then in half again, making sure to fold it just over the seam stitching. Pin the folds in place. When you reach a corner, try to create a nice mitered corner by turning the binding in at the corner and continuing to fold it the same way as you did on the first side. You can even use an iron to help you get those nice crisp folds. Pin the folds in place. And continue folding and pinning the binding until you're right around the quilt. Once you have your binding all pinned in place, it's time to start sewing it to the quilt top. You can change your bobbin thread to match the backing fabric if you'd like. When you reach a corner, simply leave your needle down, lift the foot and rotate the quilt. Then put the foot back down and keep stitching. After you've sewn the binding all the way around, it's time to press it with an iron for a neat finished look. And there you have it, your beautiful handmade quilt is complete. Thank you for joining us for this month's Sweet Pea Jar Quilt tutorial. We hope you've enjoyed creating this beautiful project as much as we have. If you've finished your quilt, we would love to see your wonderful creation. Don't forget to share it with us on our May Sew Along group. The link can be found in the description of this video. And for more stunning quilt designs like this and much more, visit our website at sweetpea.com. That is swpea.com. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, goodbye.